Chris, how's it going? Welcome to Hangry and Horny.
Good to be here, man. Good to see you, brother.
Thank you for taking the time to come on the show.
My pleasure.
Yeah, so let's give the audience, let's get straight into it. So, give us your background.
Oh, wow. Hell, I'm trying to think where the hell I think I should start.
Yeah, let's start with, your background with your field and line of work.
Okay. I'm in the energy business. I've been in the energy business since I got out of college. Grew up in Texas, and just kind of Texas is a big energy hub, so fell into that. Moved out to California after my divorce 25 plus years ago, and been out west or overseas ever since.
Okay.
And those travels have taken me to most of the continents.
And you were in Austin, Texas.
I was
right?
in Austin.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So you got in the energy business. You were at, from our earlier discussion, you went to University of Austin, Texas.
University of Texas at Austin.
Okay, mixed it up there, but
yeah, no worries.
Yeah,
it all works. Everybody
Longhorns,
knows
right?
Longhorns.
Yeah. Awesome. So how did you get into the energy business?
Well, I'd always been fascinated with energy. I mean, Texas is, a home of energy. I was economics major at Texas, and as a result of that, it just kind of flowed from there. Took several energy economics courses, a lot of economics courses. Ended up being a teaching assistant while I was there, and my professor kind of led me a certain direction and said, "You should go over here and check this place out." And that's where I went, and the rest is history. And I had started my college career as an accounting major, and I kind of, after a couple of accounting courses, I realized that sucked and it was soul sucking, and I didn't want to do something that was that constraining, and wanted to get into economics, where it was more of a thinking man's degree, where I could basically have a set of tools that I could apply to anything. And so that allowed me to get into energy, and that's where I've been ever since. And I've been on the finance and commercial side. I've picked up enough engineering to know kind of how things work, but you don't want me designing or building anything, but I can certainly finance it or sell it.
Got it. So you go into the energy business. You've been in for how long now?
30 years this year.
30 years this year.
Wow.
Okay. And then all of a sudden, now we're going to
dive
right into psychedelics.
Well,
and how you found that and how that's come into your life, especially somebody that's been sort of in that corporate world.
Well, if you'd look at me, you would never. I don't think you'd ever know that I have become a bit of a psychonaut. But 6 years ago, September, I was in Salt Lake City. That's where I was living and working at the time, and I was just out on a September afternoon, Saturday, out riding my bike. I had a steak marinating in the refrigerator. I was going to have a little bit of wine and watch Texas play Ole Miss. And about 30 seconds from home, I was cranking up. I was standing up. Had all my weight on the front wheel. Made a turn.
On your bike?
On my bicycle. I hit a buckle in the road, and I went ass over tea kettle right into the concrete head first. I broke my fall with my right pinky. Got up, was stunned in shock. Recognized that my neck was sore and it was hurting, but everything moved. But my pinky was kind of going opposite directions, and I said, "Oh, that's fucked up."
A little sideways there.
Yeah, and I said, "That's gonna need some work." A couple stopped on a motorcycle and said, see if I was okay. I thought I was, and I kind of picked myself up, walked the bike home, hung it up, went upstairs, took a shower, and then drove myself to the emergency room. I get to the emergency room. The resident goes, "I can fix that. Fix the finger." So he done it, popped and straightened it up, put a brace on it. He says, "Yeah, but my neck's kind of hurting." He goes, "Okay," and so off to the CT machine we went. He came. I got a CT of my neck, and I came back about 20 minutes later, and he had put me in a paper neck brace. And 20 minutes later, he came back and goes, "Dude, you broke your neck."
Wow.
This is now serious. We're going to put you in a real neck brace. At that time, then the head of trauma came in and goes, Chris, I'm the head of trauma. We now have a team, and we're going to kind of walk you through. You're going to be spending the night. So all this started going on in the neck brace. A physician assistant shows up and tells me, Chris, we're having a casual conversation, but this could very easily have been a serious conversation. You're going to be fine. But this could have ended a lot differently. It's a good thing you're in good shape.
And what part of your neck broke?
I cracked the C5 and the C6. So that kind of was disturbing because I had actually lost a good friend of mine to a bicycle accident 3 weeks to the day prior. So it all kind of hit me at once. Then from there, they checked me out and went upstairs and spent the night in the hospital. Neurosurgeon came in and just checked on me to make sure I was okay. And just ended up spending the night in the hospital. Didn't sleep. It was kind of one of those dark nights of the soul.
Mm-hmm.
And what I remember most was kept going on through my head was Steve Jobs' commencement speech at Stanford. That kept going over and over in my head about, what he was saying about, don't like what you're doing, then don't do it. Life's too short. And I was working for a firm that really wasn't adding value. It was taking value from the supply chain. If I had to do it over again, I would just gone on short-term disability and never went back. But I was in a neck brace for 8 weeks, couldn't travel, and had some interesting interactions with those folks. Well, what do you mean you can't travel? I said, you want the note from the doctor? He goes, yeah. So I had a good note from a doctor. Here I am, 50 years old. I've got C-level contacts all over the West, and I'm having to I'm being treated like a child. I said, okay, I'm ready to leave. So we negotiated exit and was looking at doing some other things, wanted to get overseas and apply my skills there. But as part of that process, my neck was still hurting. So fortunately, I discovered a upper cervical chiropractor, a board certified one in Salt Lake, and I was contemplating neck surgery. And then he was able to fix my neck literally in one morning.
One morning.
One morning. He's what they call upper cervical chiropractor, NUCA, which is the National Upper Cervical Chiropractic Association. 3 X-rays, one moving the C1 over, and I went from having 20 more pounds of weight on my left side to my right, and having my left leg be 3/4 of an inch shorter than my right. And it was fixed literally in 1 second.
Really?
Yeah, I felt the pop. And it's like, wow, all of a sudden this blood started rushing to my head. A couple months later, I ended up working with his wife, who's my nutritionist, and started, kind of rebooting my gut and started really going down the health path. And as far as getting overseas to do work, I almost wound up in Saudi Arabia, which in hindsight would have been a really bad thing to do, given where I was about to be headed. Ultimately, landed a 1.5-year gig in Jamaica. I was in Kingston, so Yaman, I was in Kingston town. And when I was there, I was working with a large company there. They had a very special need, and I felt it, and filled it, and it worked out very well. And I wouldn't say I became a hermit, but I discovered podcasts when I was there, and this would have been the spring and summer of 2014. So 4 years ago.
Right.
So I started diving into things, and all of a sudden, I find Ben Greenfield, I find Dave Asprey, and I find Brian Rose on London Real. And I started listening to Brian's podcast, and he started talking about, his psychedelic journeys, his time, doing ayahuasca and DMT. And I started to identify with that.
Because he also talked about being a banker,
Correct.
A former banker, so you could relate to that.
I could relate. And one of the things I got out of the gig is like, I really felt soulless. And I realized that, that night in the hospital, I was there by myself. So there was no one else there.
No family?
No family. My family's, back in Texas. I mean, they offered to come out. I said, I'm going to be fine. But there was no girlfriend, no wife, no anything. So it was kind of a wake up call of sorts.
Lonely.
And it was very lonely, and so it's time to go start doing something else. So I took the time in Jamaica, went the deep dive, and started listening to Brian's thoughts on ayahuasca and things like that. I said, you know what? I need to go do that. Because I realized that there was something missing in my life. I was closed off. I had lost a very big project. a few years back, and also I was dating a woman at the same time. She conveniently disappeared right after the $15 billion bonus didn't show up, which I guess in hindsight was a good thing.
Right. Yeah. Blessing in disguise.
Blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
There's a
Gold digger.
Well, there's the gold digger the gold digger video online when the guy hands the girl a gold shovel. Yeah.
Right.
So that's what in hindsight, that's what I was looking at dealing with.
Yeah.
So that worked out.
What was it that Brian said that resonated for you?
Well, the fact, he had been a banker. So, a lot of the stuff, everything I do it's big dollar and it's got to be financed. So I deal with bankers, I deal with attorneys all the time. So it was like it just really resonated with me as far as, how empty his life felt as being a part of that. And, so it was a very powerful statement. I said, I need to go understand that. And like I said, I had lost these things and I really hadn't dealt with them properly. And also, as we discussed earlier today, there was a lot of other deep-seated trauma from my upbringing that also really hadn't been dealt with. I mean, I had done therapy, but therapy only goes so far. Talk therapy, in my mind, is a good thing, and I think it prepared me for the things I saw in my trips. But it's not just the therapy itself was not enough.
Mm.
So,
like psychotherapy,
and base talk therapy, as I would call it.
Yeah.
Like I said, it helped. It allowed me to help process a lot of things. So this is now the summer of 2014. I was going, I need to go do this, and I needed to go back into the States to do some medical stuff. So I called my astrologer. I said, "You mentioned some stuff."
Astrologer.
So
now,
I'm introducing a lot of things into the ether.
So
here.
were you just like a closet energy guy, like in terms of like subtle energy, not just like the energy business, but you were into...
I've always noticed there's something different. And also, my father was a physician, and he goes, "Chris, we don't have all the answers," and he was spot on about that. But I've always had a fascination with astrology and a few other things.
But you weren't open with that in your energy
I don't. Oh, by the way, my astrologer said this. It's not kind of stuff you talk about when you're looking at a deal or you're looking at pro formas and things like that. So, I talked to her. I said, "Well, I want to go to Peru and go find a shaman and go do some ayahuasca." And I said, "I've got the guy for you." So perfect. So I get his contact information. I reach out to his United States handler, and I get in touch with his name's Cucho. And all of a sudden, I'm emailing this guy I've never met in Agua Calientes, Peru, saying, "Hey, I want to do this. So here's the time frame I want to be there." And we went back and forth, and he came up with a program. And I sent this guy I didn't know $1,000 to book my trip.
Just a random dude.
Just a random guy.
Yeah, recommendation.
Through recommendation.
Yeah. And before that, though, like the only experience that you had that altered your consciousness was either alcohol, pot, or cocaine.
Correct. And like I said, I was, hadn't done coke since March of '86. Did pot occasionally, probably a little hash too, but by and large, I was just a booze hound, which is, ironic since my father died of alcoholism. I masked the pain by getting drunk myself. So
yeah, it created a cycle.
It created a cycle,
yeah.
And as they say, all cycles are broken until all cycles repeat until they're broken. So that, off I went in September of 2014. I go get all checked up.
Like 4 months later, after you listened to a podcast,
I'm on my way to Peru.
Wow.
Going to go do ayahuasca with a guy I never met.
And so what happened?
Well, I get there. I get to Lima. And by the way, Peru is, if you just for people who don't want to do ayahuasca, go to Lima anyway. It's a beautiful town. Peru's a beautiful country. And spent the night in Lima. And of course, also to back up a bit, he sent me a diet. So part of doing ayahuasca is part of the preparation, the dieta. And I went through all the necessary prep work. I started pulling things out of my diet, backing off red meat and started eating only fish and chicken, took out all the spices and no pork and everything you were supposed to do in order to be ready. It kind of sets the framework for your journey. So from from Lima, I fly up to Cusco, and I get off the plane at Cusco, and there's this little guy who's about 4'6", leather hat, and chewing coca leaves, and he goes, Chris, he goes, yep, because here, come on. So off we went, and he'd booked a hotel for me, and we went for a tour of Cusco, and the next day we went out for a tour of some of the Incan ruins in the area, and that afternoon we went down to the river, and we started talking kind of what I wanted to accomplish on the trip, and I felt basically telling him I was closed off, and I'd been married before, and I'll admit to this I was emotionally broken. And I was broken like a clock. I couldn't really express my feelings, my emotions, etc. And that was part of the reason why the marriage car blew up. So I owned that piece of it. So we started talking about these things, and then then I went on my first psychedelic journey, which was peyote. So we're on this great riverbank.
Okay.
And took a big gulp of peyote.
And that's a cactus.
That's the top of a cactus.
Okay.
Well, they call it's wachuma.
Wachuma.
Is what it's called, and it's similar to peyote. If not, it just depends on what flower it is.
Right.
But at that point in time, I took another big gulp of it, and then things started to move.
Mm.
The rocks started to move. The scenery started to move, and Cucho was there kind of to hold space. And that's when I started feeling the presence of relatives. And what's interesting is through all my experiences that when I take a paternal type of psychedelic, the women in my life show up. And when I take a maternal psychedelic, the men show up, which is very fascinating. And we'll get more into that.
Okay.
But that's where I felt the presence of my mother, who had passed away several years ago, and then her mother, kind of going, "Hey, it's going to be okay. You're fine. Going to be fine." So that started opening things up.
So you felt their presence. You didn't actually see them.
I felt their presence.
Okay.
I felt their presence,
but didn't see them.
I didn't see them. I didn't. Okay. I didn't have. Like I said, I didn't have. It was a daytime experience. I didn't have quote unquote visions. My reality was altered, and it was kind of like a gateway. Okay. Kind of like we just kind of opened the door into my soul. To kind of, it was kind of a good, what I say, warm-up session.
So Cusco?
In Cusco, but it was outside of Cusco.
Okay.
And then the next day, Cucho and I.
Oh, Cucho.
Cucho.
Yeah.
At Cucho and I, then we went through the Sacred Valley on our way up to Aguascalientes. And just basically a tour of a lot of Incan ruins, which, like I said, it's a beautiful country. And the Incas were a very powerful civilization, and it was good. So I was mixing in not only the psychedelic work, but also a good historical framework,
the ancient civilization.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
Then we boarded the train at Ollantaytambo, and off to Aguascalientes we went. So the first day there, or we spent the night, and then the next day we did what I deemed the tourist version of Machu Picchu. So saw all the sites there, and for some reason, then while we were there during the middle of the day, these two women found Cucho, and I got drug into like a tobacco ceremony being done in Spanish. I had no idea what was said or done, but I was just kind of on the outskirts, kind of watching this go down. And apparently they were two witches from Mexico, and they had asked Cucho to participate and facilitate some things. So that was kind of a very interesting experience.
Bizarre.
It was just part of the culture.
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
Okay, cool.
The two witches from Mexico.
Two witches from Mexico. And what was interesting about this day was it was for Peru, it was the spring equinox.
Wow.
So it was, like I said, it was a very interesting time to be there.
Yeah, in Machu Picchu.
Wow,
on top of it.
So we did that. Great experience. The next day, we gathered our gear and we hiked up about 3 hours to Cucho's campsite, which is actually on the back side of Machu Picchu, or actually technically Huayna Picchu. Huayna Picchu is the mountain in the background you see, the famous mountain in all those pictures. That's Huayna Picchu. So we got to his camp, relaxed there the first day, and he's got a little malacca, which is the ceremony where you drink ayahuasca. So I set up my tent, and we're there in the high jungle. First night, we had, and of course I'm eating very lightly at this point, mainly water and some soup, quinoa, but something very light, because part of the process is a purge. You don't get a purge with wachuma or peyote, but you do get a purge with ayahuasca, and that's part of what you're facilitating.
Right, either vomiting or diarrhea or both.
Or both.
Yes.
Now, so the first time we sat in the fire, and as soon as it got dark, we went into the malacca, and Cucho started reciting Iqueros, which are the songs of the ayahuasqueros. And we started doing that, and then he goes and he poured out the ayahuasca. I took a big gulp, or actually, I drank the entire contents of the cup. Waited another 30 minutes, took some more, and I think after listening to Brian, and doing a lot of research, listening to all the Aubrey Marcus podcasts, the Joe Rogan podcasts, and things like that, I think the first night I was too bound up to purge. But what I did feel was a presence in my body. I felt a physical presence moving around my body, kind of checking things out. I felt it go up to my head. I felt it go down into. I had injured my knee playing football in high school. It checked out my knee, kind of checked around, but I couldn't really purge. So I didn't sleep that. We were in the malacca for about 3 or 4 hours. And I didn't sleep that well that night, but the next day got up, kind of wandered around the high jungle, and the next night we did it. We repeated it. After we had a light lunch, and then just a very, very light dinner. Went back into Malacca, and then I did had some more ayahuasca. Then then a second gulp, and then I purged, and really purged. It came very quick, and that's when the hallucinations started. So ayahuasca is a maternal energy, and that's when my father showed up.
Okay.
Basically, his presence showed up, and it felt like he was speaking to me. He goes, "Chris, you're on the right path. In fact, you should continue down this path. You're going the right direction. You're going to be fine," and kept going. And a lot of other things kind of went through that night. And the next morning when I woke up, I understand how James Cameron came up with Avatar. Because there I am in the high jungle, and I'm looking around going, wow, everything really is connected. It really is connected. And it was a very powerful experience. And
so you saw some of the same imagery that's in that movie.
Very much so. I mean, I felt, like I was walking in the high jungle. I could see where all the plants were connected, all the trees were connected, the animals, the wildlife, everything. And it was a very, very powerful experience. And we broke camp, walked another 2.5, 3 hours back into town. That night I just kind of relaxed and took it easy. And then the next day we went back up to Machu Picchu, and then we hiked up to Huayna Picchu, which is thank God for coca leaves, because it's a hike from like 6,000 feet to 9,000 feet. And I recall going past a group of Brazilians, and I kind of jokingly asked them how old they were. I said, "How old are you guys?" "Oh, we're 30. It was 30 something. And I just started laughing. Because what's so funny? Because I'm 50 something. I'll see you at the top of the mountain as we're passing them. And once we got up there, I never saw them. And we stayed up there for like 5 or 6 hours. And it was when we got up there, it was kind of a cloudy day. The clouds broke, but it was beautiful. There was 2 condors, baby condors, flying around.
Wow.
And you could see for miles.
Wow.
From up there. It was a very powerful experience. And then Kucha and I and Cucho knows all the folks there. And then from there, we kind of walked around another part of the top, and it's kind of roped off. We sat in a cave, and there I had my second experience of Wachuma peyote on top of Machu Picchu, or Huayna Picchu. And that experience was more powerful than the first because everything else had opened up. And there's something very special about that place. And one, it's physically beautiful, but there's something magical, mystical going on there. There's something can't quite put my finger on there, and
it's tangible to you.
It's tangible to me.
Yeah,
it really is. And had another peyote experience. I felt the mountain kind of come alive. And Cucho later commented, that was a very powerful experience you had. And I'm still trying to grasp as far as, kind of putting all the words together, how it experienced, but it continued to open things up.
And Cucho, was he on this too?
Well, he didn't take the heroic dose. He takes just a taste, okay. So he can be on the same frequency.
Right. And
that's what's going on.
Okay.
So had that, got that experience, and then after about 4 or 5 hours, once I came down, we then made it our way down the mountain. Which, if you've ever seen Huayna Picchu, that's not an easy task, and some people maybe think that's kind of irresponsible. I don't believe. I felt safe the entire time, and that's why if anyone out there is thinking about doing this, make sure you have an experienced spotter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, super important with the setting and the experience of the spotter,
the shaman. Just if some guy is doing this for the first time because he read a book or he got some information off the internet, don't do it. It's this is your mind, this is your body. Bad things can happen. Yeah,
this takes years of training and mastery under like a master to learn, not some weekend course.
Yeah, you don't want to do a psychedelic experience with a weekend warrior.
Yeah.
And so came down the mountain. I kind of got dehydrated, got back into town, and went out for dinner. And then later that night, I just felt kind of my entire body give up everything. And I literally got into the shower and turned the shower on, and I was removing tons of toxins from everywhere I could. And I was in that shower probably for about an hour.
What do you mean by that?
I was coming out of both ends. I was
gosh.
throwing up. I had runs. My body was getting. It said, "You've had too many toxins in your body. You've given us the right material, and we're getting rid of it all now."
Okay. So there was some stored metabolic waste.
There was a lot of stored metabolic waste.
A lot of people hear toxins and they think, "Oh God, here's this woo-woo talk again," But it's basically waste.
It's waste.
Yeah, that was stored in your system.
And it's not just waste; it's also emotional waste, emotional energy. So there's a lot of stuff that need to be kind of removed.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that. Slept great that night. Next day we head back. We head back down the mountain, down the train. Back to Cusco, say my goodbyes, back to Lima, and then back to Kingston.
Wow. And speaking of waste, too, could have been like old bugs in you as well.
It could have been all kinds of things, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And it was kind of, it was a very, like I said, it was, a very good, wonderful experience. But the only thing that I would say is that when you go on one of these experiences, be careful how you integrate yourself back into the Western world.
Yeah.
Because it makes it very difficult. Because you go from, understanding where Avatar came from to like then having to deal with, getting on a plane
mm-hmm.
and going through customs, or checking into a hotel. And I came back through Panama. I had to deal with all that. And then what was interesting when I got back to Kingston, I got back to the company. Chris, you seem much more relaxed. Yeah.
So palpable for other people.
Palpable for other people.
Yeah, they didn't know what was going on.
They didn't know what I had gone and just got.
They're like, "What did you do this
last week?" So there was the anecdotal benefit,
right?
People knowing. Plus, I felt more grounded, felt more relaxed, and.
So you're saying that you were just like wounded up.
I would say extremely wound up.
Yeah.
In my entire life, I've been on. And the only way I turned off was by drinking.
Yeah, so you're just like fight or flight, sympathetic,
and that
nervous
goes back
system.
to a lot of things I've done. I mean, I've done a SPECT scan with at the Amen Clinic, and it shows this big bright orange ball in the middle of my skull.
Which is like the reptilian,
reptile brain.
Yeah,
okay, it's on
limbic system.
Limbic system's on fire. It's just classic PTSD pattern.
And so at this point, did you have any head injuries before that?
Well, I had football stuff.
Okay.
Growing up in Texas, you're supposed to play football, right?
Right.
And now I wish I could go back and tell that you really don't want to do this. It's not worth it.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're going to get into that side of things too. So you came back, you're in Kingston.
Came back to Kingston. And then what happened is I realized I enjoyed what I did. I think I got a lot out of it. But what I realized is that I needed more. So I started looking into iboga trips.
And how did you find out about that?
Once again, I found that out through Brian Rose, or through London Real.
Okay.
Now, Brian hasn't done iboga, but Graham Hancock had, and that's where I got picked up on it. I said, "Okay, what's this stuff?" And it was like I heard a calling, and it's like, okay, started doing research. And I reached out to some people, and some of the trips that people were planning, you can come to Dominican Republic, but I need $12,000 and all this stuff. I said, yeah, you know what? That's not really. And what I had read about iboga, it's like that's a difficult journey, and it's actually more difficult physiologically than ayahuasca.
It has some risk involved.
Yeah, there's some definite risk involved.
Heart.
Yeah. So I kind of waved that off, and then got back to the States, started a new gig. And lo and behold, I'm listening to Dave Asprey's podcast. And this would have been March 2016. So I've gotten back into the Western world, and I'm sitting back in Utah doing my craft. And I listened to this podcast from Crossroads, which at the time was a clinic in Tijuana, Mexico, Rosarito, Mexico, just south of Tijuana, that specializes in iboga and DMT. What they did they do heroin detox on weekdays, and they do psychospiritual on the weekends. And it really kind of resonated. I said, I want to do that. And this was like March.
And this particular substance has been very instrumental for people overcoming some serious addictions. I mean, they have a very high success rate. Like alcohol and heroin. Right?
Alcohol, heroin, crack, a number of things. From what I understand, that there's iboga, which is the substance of the bark of a tree from Western Africa and Gabon. That contains 12 alkaloids. And then what they use for the detox is ibogaine, which is one of those alkaloids distilled down. Evidently, that is able to do things even more refined, especially with heroin. It completely resets your neurotransmitters. And
you were saying earlier that the locals tell the story of how they found out this thing was psychoactive.
Yeah, apparently, as the legend has it, the natives in Gabon were out hunting one day, and they killed some game. And they started hallucinating, and they figured out that this game was chewing on the bark of this tree. So they reverse engineered it, and that's became part of their practice by introducing this iboga into their rituals. And from a tribal standpoint, what that traditionally is used for is it's used for the rite of passage as boys become men. But so back to the podcast. This is on a Friday. The next Monday, I'm on a phone call to Crossroads. When can I go? How much is it, and when can I go?
Wow.
So I gave my deposit, and this is early March, and I had booked a trip for first part of May.
And who was on the podcast for Crossroads?
It was Dr. Dan,
which we have
Dr. Dan,
earlier guest.
And then there was also the woman that runs Being True to You, and then also the which is the integrative piece of this, which is so important. And then there was Martin Palumbo, I think
Polanco,
who was the owner of Crossroads, who basically started it because I think he had a cousin that had a serious drug problem, dependency problem, that was treated with Iboga. So I've got to, I have to do this because I think by training, technically, I think he's an ophthalmologist.
Wow.
And he's now gotten into, this is now his calling as a result. I think at the time, Dr. Dan was the medical director for Crossroads. So I listened to that, and I was like, okay, off, I'm going to go do this. And in preparation for that, I started doing a number of things, from a spiritual standpoint, because I realized that this is a much bigger leap. From the conversations Graham Hancock had with Brian about this on London Real podcast, and also the research I did. And also, part of this research was done was Aubrey Marcus's blog about the difference between ayahuasca and Iboga, and what you should do depending on what you're looking for, what you should do. And I was stuck. And as a consequence, I said, "That's what I got to go do." So my higher self knew what I needed to go do, and I refer to my higher self as a different entity from my ego.
Okay.
Which will be important in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, which, we talk about flow and other episodes of Hangry and Horny, and it's that sort of part of yourself that feels like you when the inner critic monkey mind shuts off, and that's what they call like that ego or the default mode network. And when that like quiets down and you just have pure signal, you finally feel like there's no like doubt, there's a lot of clarity, and you feel like really charged. You know? So your higher self, as you coined it or termed it, that's the part that you felt
intuition said go do that.
Yeah.
And instead of the drunken monkey, are you sure you want to do that? And I'll admit there's a little bit of foreboding, because this is a dangerous substance, and where I felt comfortable was the framework Crossroads operates in. It's a medical clinic. There are doctors present. There are nurses present. So I felt safe starting to go down that path. So as part of my preparation, I started, I had already cleaned up my diet a lot, but I wasn't drinking that much. So with Iboga, you don't have quite the reaction that you have, because it impacts different neurotransmitters than ayahuasca does. But I just basically, still wanted to get focused and take care of it that way, and in the right setting. And so as part of that, I also did another astrology reading. I also did an Akashic reading, which kind of pulled in a past life. And my Akashic reader actually pulled in a ceremony or actually from a prior life, I had been eaten by a lion after taking Iboga. That's what she pulled out. I was like, wow. And she also, interesting enough, said, your father will greet you on your way in.
Interesting. Did she know you were taking Iboga?
Yeah, she knew I was going to.
Oh, okay.
Because it was, I told her what I was up to and kind of where I was, I wanted some spiritual guidance before I went in.
Okay.
So, I get there 1st of May. This is when they were operating out of Rosarita. So they pick you up at the San Diego airport. So
let's look back up a little bit, because we actually met right before.
We did.
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah, you reached out to me, and I was down in San Diego for work. And so I actually got to see you before you went down to Mexico, and then I saw you a few days later.
You saw me when I got back.
When you got back. So
you are the bookend.
Yeah, so I was able to see like the changes in you, like physically, energetically. It was pretty wild.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, because it was good to get that positive feedback. And you said it yourself before I went in. I had a darkness on one side of my.
Yeah, you just had maybe you were just a little stiffer.
Yeah,
and then you mentioned earlier about neurotransmitters. So you actually got a pre-test.
Correct.
Of your neurotransmitters in your brain by a clinic in
Utah.
And then you did a post-test.
Did a post-test. Just to set up the framework. The pre-test, my serotonin was extremely low. My norepinephrine, epinephrine ratio was completely full fight or flight. And basically I was still, even though the ayahuasca could help, I'd still had issues from a neurotransmitter standpoint as far as how I was my brain was operating.
Okay, so just for the audience, what's the symptoms of having like low serotonin?
It's basically, it leads to depression.
Okay.
I mean, that's what they call it, serotonin reuptake inhibitors. That's what they're trying to do, is make sure you boost your serotonin.
Okay.
And so evidently what I had done with ayahuasca had helped from a personal standpoint, but it still hadn't helped me enough physiologically. And also I felt I still needed to do more work.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got the SPECT scan, I actually did the SPECT scan after the ayahuasca, so it was still showing signs of the PTSD.
Okay.
And so I did the neurotransmitter test, met with you literally the Thursday night before I went down. And by the way, I still appreciate you doing that, by the way, because you had not met me you didn't know who the hell I was.
I didn't know who the hell you were.
We had connected through London Real Podcast, and it was like, hey, I just still appreciate the hell out of that.
Yeah. You was like one of the people in the London Real Academy,
Yeah.
and you reached out, said you were in town. You're like, hey, let's meet up. I didn't know who you were, but you were a member of the academy, so I was like, absolutely, let's meet up, and had no idea what you were about to do
Until I explained it.
Yeah.
And then what was interesting about that was that we met there. We were at the Hilton there in San Diego on the waterfront, and this is where I get back to this story where I would see my dad before I went in. My father was a urologist, a kidney bladder doctor, and at that hotel was the annual convention of urologists for the United States. And it's like, okay, and when I found that out, I just started laughing. I said, that's kind of interesting.
Your dad is here.
My dad's here. He goes, you're gonna be fine. Go ahead.
Wow.
So that morning, I took a cab, checked out, took a cab, and went to the airport and met the staff for Crossroads. And everyone showed up. So there were 6 of us going to do this, and we all I think 9 of us got into one car or 2 cars. There was the 6 of us and then a psychospiritual counselor, and then the staff, the drivers and stuff. And they took us across the border. For our first stop was they stopped at a clinic. They wanted to draw blood. They want to make sure that your liver's functioning, so you can actually process iboga. And with women, they want to make sure you're not pregnant, because iboga will terminate a pregnancy on the spot. So you do that. You get to the clinic. They run you the doctors check you out, check your blood pressure, check your weight, and that kind of stuff. And then you have a light meal that afternoon, and then you kind of hang out. And it was a very interesting vibe among the group. And it was myself. There was a health blogger from New York, a fintech guy from New York, a Marine who had spent time in Fallujah, and from my observation, he clearly had PTSD tics. And there was a couple from LA who were in the entertainment business. And so we're all kind of sitting there figuring each other out, kind of what we're there. And it's kind of an interesting experience, because we all know why we're there, and we all know we're about to step into a really serious experience. So you get there, and it's like a medical ward, and there's 3 beds on each side. There's a nurse's station in the middle. Like I said, they check you out physically, make sure you're okay. You have a light meal, then you kind of just hang out. And that night, about 8 o'clock, they tell you to stop drinking water. They want you to clear out your bladder and make sure you don't have to get up much, because once you're on this stuff, you really don't want to move around much, because it kind of incapacitates you. They set you up on an IV, so you get an IV saline drip with magnesium, and that's to protect your heart. And they leave the IV setup in, and they take the bag away, but they leave the IV setup in case they have to reverse the iboga experience.
Okay.
They then set you
like
up
an antidote or something?
An antidote of some kind. I don't know what that would be, but what they do then is they strap you up with an oximeter, put your heart monitors on, and there's a heart monitor at the end of your bed with the oximeter, and that's the one thing I kept knocking mine off. during the night. They kept waking, you're not asleep, but they kept, nodding me to get the thing back on to make sure they could keep how I was breathing. And then about 10 o'clock, they came in and gave us a test batch of Iboga. It was just a little pill.
Okay.
Took that. Nothing really happened. It's 10:30, they come back, give you the first full dose. They come back at 11, they give you the second full dose. About 11:05, the train left the station. And I started hearing loud things like a train literally was in my ear. And you close your eyes, and my field of vision, I just started seeing lasers and technicolors and all kinds of stuff. I had super sensory hearing perception. I could hear things out on the street, and they sounding like they were right next to me. And then about what I'm guessing is 30 to 40 minutes after the lasers and stuff, then it starts getting into my field of vision or things I'm thinking from a prior life. I'm seeing things from Europe. I'm seeing all kinds of things. And then I started getting into my life. And it was like, and when you go through this experience, it's like your life passes in front of you, but it's like on an iPad, and you're like just flipping pictures. And what was very interesting is like sometimes you just see the picture, and then sometimes you go into the scene. And that's what happened. I mean, and one of the first things I remember is I saw my birth. And I had a traumatic birth. I was a bloody, gooey mess, and I smelled like shit because I came out with such force and fury. I literally ripped my mother a new asshole, and that got picked up on the resume on the X-ray when I got my neck fixed with the upper cervical chiropractor. So I picked up on that. I saw a lot of scenes from when I was a toddler. Pre-verbal stuff. Some of the things I won't get into because anyway, but there's some personal stuff regarding my mother and other things that I saw a lot of that, and it kind of explains a lot. I saw where she dropped me, and I saw where I landed on the left side of my head, which I think is one of my TBIs came from.
Traumatic brain injury.
Traumatic brain, yeah. So I'm seeing all this stuff going on. I saw an issue with an old girlfriend. I saw an issue with my ex-wife. I mean, and what's interesting is that we know all these things, but we contain all the information we need, but our ego gets in the way. And what Iboga does, it literally rips your ego away where you can actually see your life. I kept going through this experience, seeing other things. And I just remember thinking to myself, God, I have to remember all this stuff because I have to write it down. I just remembered as soon as I could get lucid enough to write stuff down, I did. But the most powerful experience was late in the process, way after midnight. I saw two versions of my death. I saw the good death, and I saw basically the Ghost of Christmas Future from Scrooged. The good death is I'm old, I have white hair, I'm in bed with my wife, woman, whatever she is at the time, and I pass peacefully into the night. The Ghost of Christmas Future death, I come out of this floor into this very cold marble room, and I see this casket, and the casket's open. So I walk around, and there's no one else in the room but me and the casket. I walk around and see in the casket, and in the casket is me in a hoodie, and on the hoodie and on my chest is a piece of paper, a picture of me in a hoodie saying nobody. And that just scared the shit out of me. Like, oh wow, because that my subconscious, my higher self's going, you need to get your act together because otherwise this is where you're headed.
Wow.
So I got that, and then very powerful experience. And then from there, I basically, for the next couple to 2 or 3 hours, then I had my higher self arguing with my ego. And higher self going, you need to back off. You're getting in Chris's way. Oh no, my ego's going, but I have to protect Chris. No, Chris is fine. You're getting in his way. You need to stop what you're doing. He'll be okay. He's gotten through all the bad stuff. He's going to be fine. So that went on. And then after that, it felt like Dan Pena had jumped into the side of my head. And I had this stern ass father telling me to get my shit together. And that's what, iboga is a very powerful masculine energy. And that was the last piece of it, was this powerful male stern injury going, get your shit together.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, the visions kind of ended, but I was still incapacitated. And I got to bed about 1:45 that afternoon. There was one guy in the six of us that didn't wake up until the next day.
Wow.
Yeah, wow is right. So I got up. They had a masseuse come in, kind of get you back into your body. And then most of us were able to sit down and have a light dinner that night. And, still slept great that night. But I felt like people say, oh, it's like climbing Everest. I said, no, man, it's like climbing K2. They go, why K2? Because K2 is harder. And it was. And it's like, people go, what's the real difference, physiological difference between ayahuasca and iboga? I would say this. I said, ayahuasca's like Pikes Peak. Iboga's K2. Big difference.
Yeah.
Big difference between the two. So, the next day we wake up and they take us out to the beach house. And this is where we're going to smoke DMT from the frog. So
from the frog,
the Sonoran
desert toad or
desert
something?
toad.
Okay.
The 5-MeO-DT.
Oh, DMT.
There's DMT, which they call the spirit molecule. They refer to this as the God molecule.
The God molecule. 5-MeO-DMT.
So you wait there, and then it was like we just kind of, then we didn't draw straws. We who wants to go first? So one of the spouses from the Hollywood couple went. I went second. But you get into this room, that's where the psychospiritual counselor gets involved. Oh, I'm going to back up and say one other thing. When I came out of the iboga experience, the psychospiritual counselor came by and said, "Are you okay?" I said, "I'm alive." She goes, "Yes, you are," because it was like that experience, like I thought was going to die. And as part of that, I actually filmed a video. A good friend of mine actually filmed an interview with me, just in case I didn't make it back, so my family would have a record of I hadn't lost my mind. What was Chris doing down in Mexico doing this? So they would have some record of the fact of what I was trying to accomplish.
Wow. Yeah, 'cause you're doing all this privately.
I'm doing. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, my family still has no idea what I've done.
Yeah.
They just know that there's a different
something
Chris.
changed. Yeah.
Something changed. My brother refers to the old Chris as TMZ Chris. So back to the beach house. So you go in and you do DMT, and they have it set up to where there's the doctor in the room. There's the orderly who's a big guy, and there's the psychospiritual counselor administering the DMT, and basically they scrape it off. They dry it on a slide. They scrape it off and you smoke it, and you literally when you take it in, that you fall back into a bunch of pillows. You're out before you even hit the
pillows.
And then not sure how long I was out, but it was like all of a sudden I felt I was in a totally different dimension. It's like I feel like I left my body. First thing I saw was this infinity ribbon, and it was like there's no end to anything. And then all of a sudden I felt like, and then I just saw all these panels. And I just remember the resolution was perfect. And I kept thinking, wow. And then you come out and you start to re-enter. And that's where things get really interesting. And because you don't know where you are. Or I didn't know where I was. Others have had an easier transition. I had a rough one. And then they work on trying to release things out of your lung, get you to scream. Kind of scream therapy. And I evidently had a lot of stuff to get out. Meantime, there's the psychospiritual counselor, trying to keep you calm. And I just remember smelling a lot of lavender too when I came out. And the other guys got me held down. I looked up, there was the doctor, so I'm safe. And I just felt very blissful through that. And then that night, we had a real dinner, hung out on the beach. The next morning, they gather us up and had it take us back to the airport. The striking thing is that the Marine that was there, night and day difference from that Friday afternoon to that Monday morning. It was like it's like the cloud had lifted, and he was a completely different person. And that was just wonderful to see.
That's cool, because they say things like this. It's like 30 years of psychotherapy in like a weekend kind of thing.
I did 30 years of therapy in 30 hours. And felt great.
Yeah, and it was so evident in this Marine that had PTSD from some serious stuff.
Yeah, he'd been to Fallujah during the worst part of it. So
yeah,
and so it was wonderful to see.
So much potential for healing, especially people that have had some serious traumas, experiences.
And it was, like I said, it was great to see. So we get back. Of course, one of the good things they do is they take all your electronics away. So you're
Unplugged.
you're unplugged, and because you don't want
you start calling people.
You don't want to start calling people when you're doing this stuff.
Yeah.
So that was good, and got my phone back. It's like going, I was like going, okay, and I literally kept my phone off as long as I could, and I stayed another night in San Diego, and that's when you saw me on the back end.
Yeah, we went out to dinner in Gas Lamp.
Yeah.
And that was fascinating, man. I mean, there was this sort of softness about you, even around you. The aura just like wasn't stiff anymore.
Yeah.
And we had a great like seafood dinner.
We did.
And you were just kind of telling me the same story, which you're sharing to the world. And so you came back to San Diego, and then what was going on after that?
Well, from San Diego, then I unfortunately had to go back to Salt Lake just long enough to turn around and go back east to go to the home office with the firm I was working with then.
Okay, so this is back to what you're saying about reintegrating into Western paradigms.
Yeah, and that was a little harsh, but I caught up with a consultant of mine on the connecting flight. He's like, "Man, you seem pretty relaxed." I said, yeah, I am. And then I had to go back and go deal with the material world.
What were some of the things that were hard for you going back?
Well, the firm I was working with at the time was doing some idiotic things and basically setting money on fire. And I've always been candid, but I've become more candid since then. And I was like, I had to basically bite my tongue a few times.
So you had things at the workplace.
Yeah. And it was like one of those things, it was like I realized, okay, another time for another transition. Okay.
What about like your interactions with the world? Like you were saying, like being able to.
I was with people outside of like that situation. The interactions were much better. People and friends, particularly my female friends, notice I'm a lot more grounded, much more present, not antsy, very grounded, and
so they could tell that you're there with them.
I'm there with them.
Yeah, listening,
not off somewhere else.
Yeah, Chris.
Yeah,
right.
That anxiousness had gone away, so I felt very grounded, respect. Now, about a month after getting back, we did the follow-up neurotransmitter test. And the powerful thing there was my serotonin increased by 175% before and after. My norepinephrine-epinephrine ratio went from full fight or flight to completely balanced. It was boom, perfect.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And so this is something that's available for people.
That's right.
That are suffering from things like anxiety, depression.
And I think the time has come in the society that we need to take more steps to integrate these type of modalities into the greater medical world.
Right.
Because I'm sorry, I'd been depressed. I've taken Zoloft. I've taken all these. I just got fat and unhappy on that stuff. And no, excuse me, no, let me go do this instead. and it needs to be handled properly. And I think that's the big thing. Is I think psychedelics got a bad name as far as part of the war on drugs, but because we've lost a lot of years of research, and that's things are now coming back into the front with the MAPS project and things like that, where they're using MDMA.
Yeah, exactly. And Johns Hopkins.
They're doing psilocybin.
Yep.
And yeah, these are not recreational drugs. This is not having a martini after work. These need to be handled responsibly.
Mm-hmm. And that was cool that this place that you went to were fully medically supervised. They looked at all your vital signs.
That's right.
Make sure you're good. Everybody else is good.
And you were, like I said, I felt safe.
That's cool. Yeah, because that's important too.
That's extremely important, because that otherwise, if you're worried about not coming back, you kind of dampens the ability to really experience the journey that you're supposed to be on.
Right, and probably the setting was very homey.
Well, it was.
It wasn't like a alien autopsy kind of thing.
No, it felt very good. I mean, the clinic was on the second floor, and there was like a recreational area with a garden and fountain up top. So it was, very relaxing.
Were they playing music during that time?
They played music during the DMT experience.
Okay. Wow. And so how long did they say that you were out for the DMT?
I think I was out for about 20, 25 minutes. And then there was the fuzzy period after, when you're kind of reintegrating into the world.
Kind of like waking out of a dream.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
Exactly.
But compared to Iboga, which lasted how long?
I was 14 hours.
Yeah, and then 5 MEO DMTs only 15 to 20 minutes.
But it was both. Those two are a very good bookend.
Okay.
I mean, it's like the Iboga's the work, the DMT is the reward.
What was the first one?
Iboga's the work.
The work.
The DMT is the reward.
Okay, got it.
That's how I took it, and those work real well together. And what I also did with this experience, I also engaged an integration coach through Being True to You, and worked with him for a year, kind of like reintegrating myself into the world.
Which is important.
Oh, it's very important.
Yeah.
And I wish I'd have done that after the ayahuasca experience.
Got it. Because a lot of people do these things and they're just like, get this information, this awakening, but then they're just sort of like floating out there.
Yeah.
They're not able to like get back in their bodies, get back into the world with that knowledge.
Yeah.
And I guess actualize themselves or become a better servant of the world.
That's right.
Got it. So what was the next part of your journey after that?
Well, got a new gig, and now I'm back in California, and I'm using working with a combo, which is not a psychedelic, but it's still it's a frog venom that helps clean out the body.
Okay.
Which is actually had some very good use with depression and also alcoholism as well. So I'm doing that as well, and I'm still contemplating going back and doing another Iboga experience, either at Crossroads, which has now moved to the Bahamas, or down in Costa Rica, which is a more primal experience, where they actually more of the Bawadi sense, which is the tribe in Africa that introduced Iboga to the world.
Got it. So what about, let's say you're now here, this is the Chris of now.
Uh-huh.
Looking back at the Chris from, 4 years ago when you started listening to podcasts, like what has been your transformation, your metamorphosis?
From the bicycle accidents to now is...
That was 6 years ago?
6 years ago.
Okay,
I would say, as I'm fond of saying, is like the accident knocked the stick out of my ass. And I've been shitting splinters ever since. And the psychedelic experiences have really kind of accelerated that process. I look at the world much differently. I look at things like, when I walk through a mall, I look at people from a health perspective. I said, God, you should change your diet, and you wouldn't, be waddling down a mall, things like that. I worry about kind of how the world's going, as opposed to focused on what's the next suit I'm going to buy. And, one of the things I got to when I came back from Jamaica, I had thrown everything in storage. And I just opened up the storage unit when I got back. I said, what the hell am I doing with all this stuff? And literally within a month of me getting back from Jamaica, a third of that stuff was gone.
You start purging materialism.
I started purging materialism. Also, with respect to the iboga, my body really doesn't want alcohol anymore. Now, I'll occasionally have a drink, but it's more of a ritualistic thing as opposed to a habit thing.
Right.
And oddly enough, that actually has caused me problems with relationships.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean you're not drinking? I said, well, because I don't want it.
You're not fun.
You know, it's like, wait, I'm plenty of fun. I don't need to get drunk to have fun.
Yeah.
Or be fun.
Yeah, so you lost like the craving for alcohol.
I lost the craving for alcohol. I also lost the need to show off. I lost the need to posture.
Right.
It's like,
hey, let's get another round.
Yeah, here. It's like my brother said that was TMZ, Chris. I mean, basically my life was I had a collection of trophies, the girlfriend, the car, the clothes, the degrees, etc. Now, my degrees are just expensive trophies on the wall now. It's like, you care less.
Mm-hmm. So you become like just a more compassionate human being,
much more compassion. Really want to kind of more help people. In fact, that's what I'm kind of struggling now on what the path I should take to actually do more of that.
Okay, so you're in a transition because you want to be of service more, human to human,
helping humans instead of private equity guys.
Okay, got it. And the idea where that's heading, because I know that part of your other journey is doing all this other work with some of the biohacking technologies, manual, like massage work, getting in there and like in your jaw and releasing like muscle tension. And
I'm doing all kinds of stuff like that. And I think part of that, the first step probably is me, sitting my butt down in a chair or a bench with a laptop and start putting it, quote unquote, pen to paper.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about the reboot.
Yeah. Chris reboot. That's cool.
To me, that's part of, people, that's how we learn. We learn through stories.
Mm-hmm. And what are there, things that are you looking at to do in the future?
Well, I've looked at getting into health coaching on the side. I've looked at Chris Kresser's program, which is more of an ancestral health type model. And, I thought about, I look at from a health perspective. When my father told me, he goes, Chris, don't get into medicine. They're going to screw it up. He's that right in that regard, but I think we can fix it, and I think from a societal standpoint, I get really kind of annoyed with people. And I'm not talking about people who can't afford things. There's something separate we should do there, but from people who've got insurance, well, I don't want to do that because insurance didn't cover it. I'm like going, oh, so you want me to? Because that's how I look at it. So you're not going to take care of yourself. You're going to default to insurance, which means someone else behind the tree is paying for that stuff.
Yep.
And I also look from the standpoint, it's like, is it cheap to eat the way I eat? No. But I'm improving the quality of my life. I'm going to live longer. I'm going to be less of a burden, not just for myself, but on family, friends, loved ones, and society, by taking better care of myself. Plus, I feel much better. My brain works better. And, we're happier this way.
Yeah, and then you, in the end, actually get more productivity.
Get more productivity.
More creativity.
And
more finance.
Yeah, that's where I'm just trying to find the right path. Because, everyone's done so many. The Ben Greenfields, the Dave Asprey's, the Brian Rose, they're all doing something. I'm kind of trying to find my own way into that space.
Which is interesting because in my experience, it kind of finds you.
It does.
Yeah. So it's just a matter of, like you said, writing down on paper, like what comes out, what your likes or dislikes are, and then just kind of sitting back and allowing that to like present itself. Mm-hmm. And that's been the case for me many, many times, There have been so many times where I try to like force a certain direction, and then life has this funny way of like course correcting you,
Well, I rewatched the movie The Way last night because I just had a cranial sacral session where that actually came up during the session in relationship to, Martin Sheen's character in the movie and his son, who's Emilio Estevez. In my case, it was actually reversed because I was the son who's been on a journey where my father died early.
Yeah.
In the journey.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of powerful to kind of get that frame and going, okay, now what do I do? And of course, you see in the movie, Martin Sheen's like in Morocco or something. So that's, to me, that's the metaphor for me. It's like, where do I want to go next?
Is that the one with the Camino del
Yes.
Santiago path?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Martin Sheen, I remember watching that, he takes this journey across,
That's right.
and it's like how many hundreds of miles of walking?
500 miles.
Okay. And so after watching that movie, from getting a cranial sacral work, it reminded you of like being more like Emilio Estevez or Martin Sheen?
I feel like I'm Martin Sheen's character,
Okay.
but I'm not the father, I'm the son. So the
son.
roles are reversed.
The roles are reversed. Got it. And so what are the things that you're just more or less like trying to see what comes up?
I need to go I have to figure this out. And and that's where it's like, I need to get out of my freaking head and stop analyzing it and start just doing it.
Right.
And I think it'll come.
Has anything kind of present itself from your heart?
I still think I'm identifying with the Chris Kresser stuff, the ancestral health. I've also, on the complete flip side, I look at, putting things into perspective from a global macro standpoint, because I've always been very good at strategy. Mm-hmm. And in fact, a friend of mine told me the other day, you really need to do more strategy oriented things. So I look at kind of where we are as a society, and we are spending 19% of our GDP on healthcare. That's entirely too high.
I heard that it's going to bankrupt the nation bad.
It will.
With just diabetes and what was the other? There was like or heart disease or two different things.
But it's all lifestyle related.
Yeah,
and it's like that goes back to my comment about the insurance. It's like, we all are responsible for ourselves. We all have the drunk monkey telling us, no, the cookie's fine. No, the cookie's not fine. And we have to frame it differently. We need to get more people need to be more responsible. Not just we as, Americans and consumers, but companies need to be more responsible as well. And you're starting to see that. You're starting to see the growth of that path. I mean, for example, like the Bulletproof Conference or I haven't been to a biohacker conference, but I've been to like PaleoFX. I mean, that's what PaleoFX is big into that. Mm-hmm. People taking charge of it. In fact, I remember the first 2 years I was at PaleoFX, what I noticed is that there were a lot of mothers there trying to figure out how to fix their kids because their doctors couldn't provide the answers.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult, like, for most people eating processed foods, and the addictive nature of that was designed by these companies to get you to consume. And it is, I mean, just for me, trying to stop drinking coffee, the idea of like going to some shop to get a drink every day for even if it wasn't coffee, like a matcha tea or a chai latte, or you develop this habit, and it's like in your mind you can feel that like craving.
That's
like,
right.
And it's like, how do you break that, right? And not everybody gonna have the ability to do psychotherapy or psychedelics under a supervised setting. So how can someone break that cycle?
There's other cheaper ways to do it. I mean, there's a Pavlok. I mean, that's kind of rudimentary, and people go, "What? Will you shock yourself?" Yeah, you do, but it's not like you're sticking your finger into a light socket. It's just a subtle nudge, and that's what but it starts with those little things, and it's something if you want to reboot your life. Okay, you don't need to go to the Bahamas now to go to Crossroads to redo that. You can. It's small steps. Start with small steps.
Yeah, the first thing I could think of that helped me, because I've tried like all these different things throughout the years, and that whole thing about having a traumatic brain injury that we were talking about before we started, and is to say, hey, there's nothing wrong with me per se, like you don't really need to fix like the higher self. There's just a part of your brain that may have been damaged from getting a trauma in the head. Like, we've all hit our heads at some point. And according to like science and research, that these downstream cascades are leading to like hormone deficiencies and issues with neurotransmitters and the electrical signals, the biochemical molecules in the brain. So maybe you're having these perceptions of the world and these cravings because your brain is not actually like fully online.
Correct.
And that was like the answer for me, because I actually got a blood test, saw what I was deficient in, replenished those things, and within like 2 days, like my morning depression, I had anxiety for most of my life, was gone.
Oh, perfect.
And that was just from taking something simple as pregnenolone.
Wow.
And then being on that protocol for about a month to balance the chemistry in my brain, I had just lost 2 belt sizes without even trying to exercise, right? And so I was like, wow, I feel so amazing. What else can I do? And so a lot of people are using like willpower, and we already seen that that's very limited.
Well, you only have so much willpower.
Yeah.
And I think the simplest thing someone can do, for example, is check your fasting glucose in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
That'll tell you how your blood's processing.
And
sugars.
so how would somebody do that?
For example, there's a machine called a Dario, and they'll give you the machine free, but you buy the strips, and you can buy glucose strips almost anywhere.
Okay.
At any drugstore. And this goes back to something I learned at PaleoFX. Dr. Perlmutter was talking about the fact if you have a fasting glucose number of 94 or less in the morning on a regular basis, the chances of you getting Alzheimer's, a condition which there is no cure, which he reiterated every time he said the word Alzheimer's, chances of you getting it are slim to none. If you're in shape, the chances of you getting Alzheimer's are slim to none. He presented all that data.
Mm-hmm.
Our health is in our hands.
Yeah.
This idea that you have to rely upon a guy with a white coat, which is a Madison Avenue creation, by the way, to me is ridiculous. You are in charge of your health. I am the COO of my EO of my body.
Right. So
and my mind.
Yeah. So you got to, as a person, say, I want my power back.
It's right.
Yeah.
And you can take it back. The ability is out there. I mean,
yeah.
People talk about, making fun of Dr. Google. There's enough information out there.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to people. And I mean, I'm not saying you go out and treat yourself on stuff, but, be proactive.
Yeah, it's crazy because, some people it always leads to some kind of like objection, some kind of excuse. And, it is definitely difficult, like based on like your peer group, right? And people that you're surrounding yourself, the environment that you're in. If you have like these kind of products in your house, it's going to be easy to just reach for those things when you're at your weakest, and so there's like so many, like it's pretty much like everybody knows like how to like get better, it's not like they don't know, like, I need to move more, I need to eat better, I need to get outside, I need to hang around cool people, they're supportive. Like, we all know all these things. Drink more water.
That's right.
Right? Eat organic. And it's just, I'm just trying to think, like, what was it about us that made the shift, and it seemed like it was a desperation moment.
Oh, like I said, it was me. It was that night in the hospital.
Yeah.
And it literally took me breaking my neck and almost being a paraplegic or quadriplegic to wake my ass up. And the funny thing is, I remember seeing this black cat about 3 minutes before I had the accident. And in hindsight, I'm kind of thinking that was like an angel going, we're about to dump your shit. And that's exactly what happened. But it took that. I mean, I was doing okay, but I wasn't being who Chris can be.
Right. I've also noticed for me, sometimes you hear people say the same thing, but it takes somebody to say it in a way that you've never heard it before. And then it just like clicks.
Unlocks a key.
Yeah.
It's like a key. It's like the right key and the right lock.
Right. So it's just a matter of like, a lot of people are like, Tony, how do you like do what you do? How do you meet the people that you do? It's something that you have to like decide, like, this is how I want to live my life. And I deserve to have this. Life is short, And have you had that kind of moment as well?
Oh yeah, it's like I'm in that moment space right now.
I'm
in my mid 50s, and it's like I'm conversation with my astrologer. You're at a point in your life you're not sure if you want to keep doing what you're doing. I said, no, I don't, man. I still have bills to pay, but I got to figure out a way to find another path.
Yeah. Wow, man. So we got like Magic Flow Best coming up, and so you're
giddy up. We're bringing some new toys. We're gonna bring the Neurolight, which is EMDR on steroids.
Yep. What is EMDR?
That's light therapy.
Okay.
And it's really it's great for like PTSD and a variety of things. And I've got a booklet on a number of things we can do, and it really is just a taste.
Right. So if you could explain how would light therapy be beneficial for someone, like in terms of like shifting their state?
It shifts your state. It allows you to shape your brain from a vector standpoint. I consider the MDR work as like neurofeedback, but not with voltage, but with light.
Okay.
Because the brain responds to light, regardless. Like it's an EMDR device, like it's like the Neurolight, or a Da Vinci device from Canada, or a Vielight, which is another type of light, but for a different purpose. Mm-hmm. The brain responds to light.
Yeah, obviously, because we need the sun, right? And so the sun has an impact on our moods.
That's right.
Our metabolic functions, and so you have this one particular technology is supposed to like induce these sort of processes in the body. Mm-hmm. Okay.
It allows you to kind of shape where your mind wants to go. I mean, there's a number of modalities incorporated in the Neurolight, and they have a protocol for less alcohol dependence. They have a protocol for reducing worry, reducing anxiety, brain balance, trying to resync your hypothalamus with your pineal gland, all kinds of things. It's a variety. It's pretty cool stuff.
So you wouldn't have to use like pharmaceuticals per se. You can use.
I'm not a doctor. I don't play on the internet. I like this technology, and I'm not going to get into that representation. So.
Right, yeah. It's basically a tool to be able to shift your mood.
Exactly. It's a tool to shift your moods.
Right, and so you have also this other light called like the Juve.
I have the Juve light, which is an infrared for collagen build, and other types of kind of reboots in your cells from a energetic standpoint.
And is that like actually like warm or?
No, it's very warm.
Okay.
In fact, sometimes what I'll do yoga stretching in front of it to help me loosen up my muscles. What I do in the morning is I'll stand on my vibration plate in front of the Juve light naked, because the Juve light's good for boosting testosterone.
Nice. Yeah. So how long have you been using that for?
About 6 months now.
Okay. And what are the results have you found from it?
Better skin tone. I think my
feeling more manly.
More manly.
Bigger balls.
I might even respond to that.
Yeah. Hey man, Horny, man.
Because there's no good way to respond.
Yeah. That's funny, man.
So that I got that, and then the other toys I got, and I'm we discussed earlier, I'm gonna do some brain stem cells, and some of that technology I'll incorporate with that. The Vielights in my nose, which actually gets
in the nasal.
In the nasal, it helps improve circulation in your brain. There's the I forgot. I'm drawing a blank on the lights that you put in your ears.
In the ear, okay.
Yeah, which helps with that. Also helps. I've got the Halo, which helps with.
Which is like an electro
device that comes across the top of your head.
Okay.
I've got a Circadia, which helps with sleep and ramping down adrenals, which I've had some issues with.
Got it.
There's tons of things. Fortunately, I do stuff that pays me to do this. So I get paid to do this, but I'm fortunate and very thankful that I have a living that I can do things like that and experiment. Now,
yeah.
It's part of that. I think it's part of things why I want to do with the book is kind of share those technologies and my experience with those.
Yeah, so you're doing self-experimentation because you're taking responsibility for your own life, your own health.
Yeah.
And so you're using all these different technologies and tools that are out there to try to find out how to not just heal. Could you have traumatic brain injuries from football, and
bikes,
that bike accident,
and also I think I've got one from skiing.
From skiing, okay.
Yeah.
Got it. And then just the years of stress and abuse from working in a high stress environment,
Work, life, and
marriage,
marriage, and so
divorce.
it's not good for us to be hunched over a computer for 25 plus years on a keyboard. We're not built to do that.
And how's your body been feeling like since you've been on that journey?
Pretty good.
Yeah, you can feel like the rewinding,
Yeah, a little bit of aging backwards.
Okay.
And I'm like I said, I'm blessed to have that happen. I mean, my bicycle accident could have gone a completely different direction, and I'm blessed to the fact that it didn't. And I have full use of my neck, full use of my shoulders, legs, etc. So all is well.
Yeah, knock on wood. Well, Chris, thank you so much for sharing your story. It was
My pleasure,
super
man.
Powerful. I think a lot of people are going to really enjoy that, especially those that are maybe new to this space, especially those people that are maybe on the same path that you were on, in like corporate, kind of doing that like 9 to 5, like,
or 9 to 9.
Oh, yeah, right. 9 to 9. Yeah, exactly. For years.
Half days.
Yeah, half days. Crazy, man. And that they have like an opportunity to heal from all these different things that we are experienced and exposed to in life. So again, do that stuff responsibly. It's not a toy. You need to be doing it with someone that has experience with that.
And also remember that where you do it is important.
Yep.
Because legality is determined by jurisdictions and boundaries and borders, which is driven a lot by commercial interest.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But be careful. Your greatest threat may be a legal one.
Right. Great words of wisdom there, man. So thank you so much
You're
for
welcome,
coming
my
on
friend.
Hangry and Horny.
My pleasure, brother.